I'm Ethan Moore from Stockholm Supply, and today I'm going to show you how to assemble the new Flatmaster all fence. There are lots of little parts and pieces, but overall it's pretty easy to put together. So we do have some instructions that are included with that. So what I'm going to do is just kind of follow along with these instructions and get this thing assembled. So the first things that you'll need are these two lower brackets, that guy right there. We'll start with one of them, but they're the same right there. And you will need the 1/4 inch bolts, which looks like that. Now, when you get the hardware package, the nut and the washers won't be assembled like that, but just for this video I did that to make it a little bit simpler. So, you're going to make sure you have a washer under the head of that bolt, and if you look right there, these two center holes right there, that's going to be where this guy goes. Okay, so you're going to use two of them, one on each side, and just make sure there's a washer on there, just like that. So they should sit in just like that. Often they're a little bit tight in there because that makes it easier for them to sit without them falling out. Next thing you're going to do is you're going to grab one of the upper brackets, and you're going to put that on top just like that, and it should slide on. Now it doesn't matter which direction you put this, but when we get to the second half, we'll make sure it's on the opposite way. So if you look down in there, a little bit hard to see, but there's two threads of those 1/4 inch bolts sticking out. What we got to do now is get washers on top of those threads, or on top of those bolts. You might have to just kind of toss it in there a couple times to get it to land in the right spot. And what I have here is a 7/16 socket on an extension. This is the easiest way to tighten these up. Alright, so we'll slide this in here, and it'll tighten up just like that. And we'll tighten this one as well. Now if you don't have a socket with an extension, you can do the same thing from the bottom with a screwdriver, though it is a little bit more difficult, so it'll just take a little bit of patience to attach it. Okay, so once we have it at this point here, let's read the instructions here. Oh, the next thing that we got to do is there is a small hole on the end of this bracket here that we're going to use a 1024 bolt in. So here's our 1024 bolt. We're going to make sure we have a small washer on the head. That'll go up through the bottom here, and you may need a screwdriver just to get it threaded in all the way. And then on the top side here, washer, nut. And just tighten that up. Alright, so those two are totally assembled together. The last thing that we would do is attach this clamp. So this guy comes in through the back. The stud will go right through that hole. And then on the front side here, washer, and you're just going to loosely put this nut in place. Okay, and the final thing we'll do before we get to the second part, this just makes it a little bit easier to assemble once we put the track on, is we're just going to thread the heads of these 5/16 bolts through like this. Now we're not going to tighten these, we're just going to leave these loose in there. So there's 4 of those we got to put in. So a washer below the hex head, sorry, not below the hex head, no washer below the hex head, but washer on the same side that you have the nut. Okay, so those two bottom bolts that will hold our fence on, they're a little bit hard to get at, but we have 2 holes through the face here. We have a couple slots through the slide. Now to get these nuts on here, I'm just going to get a 1/2 inch socket and just thread them on. So I'm just putting this through the face just like that and just threading them on a little bit. Oops, that one missed my threads. There we go. Okay, so we got this guy here all assembled. Make sure you leave these bolts here loose, because this is going to slide onto this track right here. But the next thing we got to do is repeat those steps exactly the same, except this time we're going to put the upper bracket on in reverse. Okay, so we have both sides of the fence assembled here. Now they should look like that, the exact same, but assembled opposite. Now one thing I did forget to do on both of these is add this 1024 bolt to the outside hole there. This will actually connect to the bottom of our track. So just slide this up and just loosely put this nut on there just like that, and same thing on this bracket. And again, make sure you have a washer below the heads of all the bolts here. Okay, so now that we have both sides assembled, what I like to do is take one of these clamps, it doesn't matter which one, but slide it on to the Flatmaster fence, or the side of the table, the rail here, and just tighten it in place. Just like that, that'll tighten up. Now, once I have it in this position, I will take the all track here. Now it's going to have a 3/4 inch miter gauge on one side and the 2 dovetailed slots on the other. You're going to want the 3/4 miter gauge to be on the inside of the fence, up against the brackets here. So what will happen is these 2 slots, just push those bolts out. The heads of those bolts will slide into these slots here. Just got to make sure you have them lined up correctly. Just like that. Same thing with these 2. These got to be pushed out. Oh, and of course that bottom one there, the 1024, it's going to line up in that very bottom slot there. So once you get them all lined up, it can be a little finicky to do, but once they're lined up, it'll slide right in there. Just like that. So you're going to want to stick this out beyond the bracket here, approximately 1/2 inch. Put a little pressure down so it's flat with your table. And you can go ahead and tighten this up. Now at this point you don't need to super tighten it, but just so it's not going to move on you. Now if you don't have a socket, you can get at these nuts through the side here, just like that. And we just got to make sure we tighten that bottom 1024 just like that, so that nut will be tightened into the track. So that's 1/2 of it assembled, and you can already see how strong that is. Once we get the back side, that's going to make for a very solid fence. So to get the back side on, just make sure you remove this clamp first. I know we just put that on, but just take it off real quick. And we're going to slide it in the exact same way, just from this direction. So once we have it all the way in there, what I like to do is get a piece of paper, which I don't have handy here, but I'll put a piece of paper in between this rail and this fence clamp here. That way I know I have a little bit of space so this fence will slide nicely back and forth on my table. So let me just grab a piece of paper here. Alright, so here's my paper thickness. So we'll just wiggle this in. Something jamming it up here. Oh, right there. That's why. Just got to get it out of the way of that motor for a second while we're adjusting this in. Okay, just back that out again. Put my piece of paper in there. And just push her up against. Make sure everything looks nice and straight. And tighten her up. And don't forget about the bottom of the fence here. So once you got it all assembled, just make sure the fence is fairly equal. If you look at it from this side here, Kate, make sure you have about an equal amount sticking out of both sides. Now I'm a little bit longer here than I am there, so what I could do is loosen all the bolts and just slide that whole track over to fix that, but I'm not going to worry about it here. And then we'll just quickly slide this clamp on. There we go. So this here is what the fence looks like once it's all assembled. So this can be put on this side of the Flatmaster or the opposite. Okay, so yeah, you're going to slide it along there and lock her up. Wherever you please. So that makes for a nice sturdy fence. So you can do edge sanding. You could attach our feather wheels. It's got a 5/16 slot here, 5/16 slot here. Or you could join the tracks together and make this whole fence longer. And with that slot in the bottom, you can attach a couple little lips and make for a large in-feed, out-feed table, which I'll show you in a future video. So yeah, if anybody else has any questions, you can email me at info@stockhamsupply.com or just comment on the video.